And good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Video Sports Page. I'm your host, Carl Pratt. Behind the scenes, Rich Goulart putting it all together for us. We appreciate his efforts as we bring you show 1147 for your viewing pleasure. This, of course, is the program where the emphasis is on local sports, and we took our video camera around the local area this week. We've got some youth basketball highlights to share with you from the West Plymouth Junior League action from Wednesday night. That's where the Cavaliers, check that, wasn't the Cavaliers, it was actually the Vikings that were in action as they took on the Terriers. We'll also have an opportunity to spend some time with co-head coaches from Plymouth South Varsity Wrestling. These two gentlemen are very, very pleased this days and very, very proud as well, as their squad is up to a perfect 24-0 with just one match remaining on the regular season. And from the pro ranks, we know about the Boston Bruins off to a great start, probably their best start since the early 70s. Well, not too long ago, in fact, following the season opener against the Rangers, I had an opportunity to be in the locker room. So I'll share an interview with Chris Bourque. Chris is the son of Ray Bourque, who had such a terrific career with the Boston Bruins. And I'll also replay an interview I had with Andy Brickley. Andy's one of the TV voices for the Boston Bruins, a former NHLer himself. He's been around this neck of the woods for nearly 15 years, loves what he does, and it certainly comes out with his game analysis. But right off the top, let's talk about what could be a very special night over at Silver Lake for boys varsity basketball on Friday. That's where the Lakers will take on a very good Whitman-Hanson basketball team. But for Silver Lake, if one young man can score 9 points in the basketball game, he will become just the fourth all-time scorer for Silver Lake, reaching the magic plateau of 1,000 career points. We're talking about Tucker Bouchard, who's had a great career for Silver Lake. Most recently this week, he had 21 points in a victory, a lopsided victory for Silver Lake, as the Lakers defeated Middleborough 71-51. Tucker's brother, by the way, Tanner, he had 17 points in that victory for Silver Lake. The Lakers having a fine season at 9-5, well on their way to the postseason. So once again, if things really go as planned and the way they've been going all season long, Tucker Bouchard gets 9 points. He becomes just the fourth basketball player in Silver Lake varsity history to score at least 1,000 points. Now, speaking of basketball, the Plymouth South Panthers are 6-6 on the season, following a victory against Nauset 55-40. We're talking about boys varsity basketball. Coach Costa's team trying to get into the postseason for the second time in just 2 years under his direction. Mike Mealy led all scorers for the Panthers last week in that win against the Nauset Warriors. He threw in 19 points. Well, you know, Mike Mealy is just a young basketball player for Plymouth South High School. There's a young hockey player for the Boston Bruins who isn't that much older than Mike Mealy. We're talking about Chris Bourque. He's the son of Ray Bourque, who had such a great career with the Boston Bruins. And following the Bees' season-opening victory a week ago Saturday, I had an opportunity to talk to the young Bruin. Let's call on Rich Goulart. Let's roll that interview. Okay, now joining me this week on the Video Sports Page, Chris Bourque. Boy, talk about the history of you and your dad both wearing the same uniform.
Yeah, it's great. You know, a nice little story. But, you know, it just felt like another game out there to me, which was good. Not too nervous out there, and, you know, I felt pretty good.
Does it work as soon as that first shift is over? It's just like any other hockey game?
Yeah, exactly. You know, as soon as you get your first hit in or first shot on net or something, all the butterflies kind of go away. So, you know, it was really fun out there, and I had a blast.
With all the different coaches you've had in your life, you couldn't have asked for a better coach than your own dad, who was just a stone's throw away.
Yeah, exactly. Any advice that he gives me is pretty good advice. So, you know, I have the resource there, and, you know, it's real easy to go to him. He's just a phone call away, and, you know, it's been pretty good.
But what about being a youngster growing up and coming to hockey games when your dad played and saw how much he was respected and loved by the fans when you were a little kid, and now you're wearing that same uniform?
Yeah, it's really special. You know, I see his pictures all over this locker room, and I actually grew up in this locker room pretty much. So, you know, this place is like a second home to me in a way. But, you know, it's obviously he's well respected around town and well deserved because he was he's a great man and he was a great player.
Aside from being that hockey player, your dad, and watching him and as great as he was, who was that first bigger than life figure when you tagged along with your dad that you looked up and said, wow, there's so and so?
Probably Cam Neely. You know, growing up, he was my favorite player, and you know, it's funny. You know, a lot of guys get intimidated when they come to the locker rooms when they see Zdeno Chara or Milan Lucic. I don't get that so much because I kind of grew up around all those kind of guys. So I was a little bit spoiled as a kid growing up. So in that nature, it's nice where I feel a little bit more comfortable coming in here.
How about this being a sports town where everybody loves the Red Sox and the Patriots and the Celtics and obviously the Bruins? I mean, could you think of a better place to be a professional athlete?
No, I mean, that's including me. I'm a huge fan of the Red Sox, the Patriots, the Celtics, all that stuff. So, even the Bruins, they were always my favorite team growing up. So to me, it's the best place to play, sports in the world. The Boston Bruins are such a storied franchise, so it's an honor to be a part of the organization.
How about this realistically? Did Dav had any words of advice before this first game? I mean, when you're either having dinner and saying, instead of just like, hey, son, go get him and do your best, but he must have had something to say.
Yeah, not too much. He kind of left
Well,
me
he never did say a whole lot, so that's
he
probably
kinda left
par,
me
right?
on my own, but, the little things that he says, play your game, do what you can do. You deserve to be here, and all those little bits of advice to give me confidence. And when he speaks, it means a lot, so everyone usually listens, and it's really nice having him.
Well, listen, appreciate your time. Hope you have a great career. If you can do half of what your dad did, you'll be in the Hall of Fame too, right?
I don't know about that, but
There you go.
Exactly.
Well, listen, thanks. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
We'll continue with more. Chris Bork, son of Ray Bork, but he's going to carve out his own niche, I'm sure, joining us this week on the Video Sports Page. Well, we talk about the terrific start by the Boston Bruins. How about the start, the middle, and even almost the finish to the regular season for the Plymouth South Varsity Wrestling program? They got co-head coaches, people that are very familiar with this program, Mark Loranger and Coach Petrosino. All right, they've had a terrific year directing these youngsters. How about 24-0 following some recent action? They have just one regular season match remaining, and the Plymouth South Panthers will take on New Bedford next week, and they could have a terrific regular season heading into the South Sectionals that'll begin in 2 weeks. Well, I broke in on the practice on Wednesday, and I had an opportunity to talk to both head coaches together. We had one of the other assistant coaches doing our video camera work, so bear with us. We appreciate everyone's effort to put some focus on an outstanding program. Okay, let's continue with this week's edition of the Video Sports Page. It's a Wednesday afternoon, and we're interrupting the undefeated practice for the Plymouth South Varsity Wrestling team. And tonight I'm pleased to be joined on the program by co-head coaches Sean Petrosino and Mark Loranger, two good friends. I'll start with you, Mark, as a veteran of this program. You've got to be pleased, 24-0.
Yeah, I mean, it's really been better off than we thought. I mean, we were going down to wrestling with Thune and St. John's Prep and some of the good teams on our schedule. We weren't sure where we'd be, so we couldn't be happier.
Well, let's talk about you coming back in this gymnasium, inside this weight room, inside this room to work out, something you missed a year ago.
Yeah, I was over at Wareham for a year, and I thought for a year, I was telling my wife, I thought I'd enjoy it, the winter being off, and I mean, I barely even talked to Coach Petrosino because I didn't want to hear about it. I was so that upset about it. I missed it, and when I got the assistant principal job, I wanted to coach again, and Sean and Chris Sheridan, thankfully let me back in. It was great.
Well, let's put some focus over here to Sean now for a moment. You and I visited a year ago, and you gave all the credit to Mark. But how about in your wildest dreams right now on the threshold of possibly a 25-0 regular season?
It's pretty incredible. I mean, we've had some great teams over the years, with Vinny and Troy Perry and all those great wrestling and those great wrestling teams. I've been lucky to have been a part of coaching and wrestling, and to be at this point, Coach Loranger and I said years ago that this was the team. We've been waiting for years on this team because we had those kids come up through the youth program that Mark started up back in, I believe, 2002, roughly around there. And, you know, it's really blossomed now because I would say about most of the kids in our starting lineup came through that program.
Let's talk about it if we can this season, okay? You get 24 victories. You say, yeah, everyone's equally important. But there are some special victories this year. You've beat some outstanding opponents.
Yeah, the St. John's Prep match really solidified us to where we are right now. I mean, they came in and they were saying things on Mass Wrestling, talking about how they were, you know, Plymouth South wasn't in their league, and, you know, that was a statement match for us. And, you know, we had a good showing at the Marshfield tournament as well, and, you know, we beat some pretty good teams in the Atlantic Coast League, Marshfield, Plymouth North as well, and we really stepped up our game.
Well, no team goes 24-0 without an awful lot of individual success, even though it's a team sport. So I'm going to play this between both coaches here, Coach Petrosino to my left, Coach LaRanger to the right. You give me two wrestlers that have really stood out for you this year, and then I'm going to ask Coach the same question, just quickly.
Dylan Finley at 106, and I would also have to say Shane Mulligan at 195.
And why'd you pick those two quickly?
Just because Dylan Finley's had some outstanding matches, beat North Andover wrestler that was excellent, and had some real key wins, ranked in the state. And Shane Mulligan has been on a tear, just beating some really good kids along the way as well.
All right, you heard my question to Coach Petrosino.
It's pretty hard to pick two. We could pick our whole lineup. I mean, we don't have a kid in our lineup with a losing record, you know. And I think the Hardy boys have done a great job, Colin and Ryan, and then, you know, Eric Klinger and Dylan Oxen have also done great jobs. I mean, we've got kids that are 26-2, 26-1, and those kind of records. And, you know, we're fortunate. I mean, we're very deep, very deep.
Well, there's always one, though, that sneaks up on you and says, geez, I'm going to really earn my spot and stay there. Is there one surprise?
I would say Eric Klinger is for me. I was gone a year, and he was a sophomore when I was here. And as a senior, I mean, he has a chance to go to the state finals as a senior. He's been that good this year.
All right, so before I let the two coaches sneak away, I got to ask you, you coached and you wrestled with Coach LaRanger or for him in the past. What about this program? What do you think about when you leave this gymnasium now, the outstanding success?
I mean, it's just really incredible, and to have him back is really excellent. It's not only good for this wrestling team, but the school. And when he left, you know, last year, they didn't just lose a gym teacher. They lost someone that was a great influence to every single kid that came through this building. And to have him back in this room with this program, you know, we've been doing this now for 8 or 9 years, and it's, you know, it's really a great ride right now.
Well, Sean, we appreciate your time, and I know Coach LaRanger appreciates the kind words. And I got to ask you, could you be the best person ever to answer, absence makes the heart grow fonder?
Yeah, it really does, you know. And like I said, I mean, we got to credit our middle school coaches, too. Coach Finley, who runs our middle school program, Coach Stasielski, Coach Ketterer, and Coach Gadagno down at the middle school for doing a great job. And, you know, and Coach and I are lucky to have Chris Sheridan with us, and little David Finley's helping us. I mean, we got a lot of good people around us. We're a family. It's a lot of fun.
And how about just a quick word about Plymouth North, because you know a lot of those wrestlers, you know Kevin Farrell, and to really put the entire town on the map with wrestling. We know about South and the great success, but North is coming back on the map as well.
Yeah, they're doing a really nice job. They're having a good season, and, you know, Kevin's a great coach down there, and, you know, they have a very bright future. They got a lot of young kids, and they're doing a good job working hard. So it's fun for us, too, because we have a nice rival, and they're good matches, and, you know, it's fun to get geared up for Plymouth North, Plymouth South.
Okay, Mark LaRanger and of course, Coach Petrosino joining us on the program. All right, as we continue to talk about high school wrestling, let's talk about the Carver program. Struggling a bit of late, but they're a co-op program. It's Carver and Wareham. And we have some highlights to share with you in a few moments as Carver took on Norwell recently. Coach Stasielski directing that program. He does have some fine individuals, just doesn't have enough. The numbers are way, way down for Carver wrestling, and that's always been the case, but this year more than ever. They do have the number 5 ranked wrestler in the state at 106 pounds. That's Aiden McGrath, who's also one of the tri-captains for the team, and he's only a junior. So let's call on Rich Goulat behind the scenes. Once again, we're going to show you some action, varsity wrestling action, as Carver, that co-op program with Wareham, took on Norwell. Okay, the combination team of Carver Wareham going up against Norwell. What a terrific pin. It looks like that young Carver wrestler, Mr. Rooney, was getting dominated, but, you know, one little flip here or there and it can change the entire tide. Well, while we're on the subject of high school sports, let's talk about the Plymouth South girls varsity basketball team. Big victory against Nauset on Tuesday. And I'll tell you what, this team heading towards the postseason and got a couple of games remaining and still very much in the hunt for the Atlantic Coast League Championship. Speaking of girls basketball and success, how about over in Duxbury? The Duxbury girls are 11-1 following a lopsided victory on Tuesday. Michaela Norton led the way for the Green Dragons of Duxbury. She was a perfect 10 for 10 from the foul line. Meanwhile, Bridget Quilty led the way with total points as she had 17 in the ball game. Well, you know what? Going back to Boston Bruins action, if you like that team, you follow them on Nesson, you know the game analyst for Boston Bruins hockey is Andy Brickley. And I had an opportunity to talk to Andy recently inside the Nesson booth. Okay, let's continue with this week's edition of the Video Sports Page. A very special night here at the TD Garden as the Boston Bruins open up this strike-shortened season. Tonight, I'm pleased to be joined on the program by Andy Brickley, one of the Bruins color analysts. You've been doing it for a while, but Andy, hockey's your whole life.
It has been, and glad to say that. And how lucky am I to be able to have played as long as I did in the National Hockey League and now still in a second career make my living around the game of hockey. And I'll tell you, that 113-day lockout certainly hurt us a lot. We were part of the collateral damage.
Yeah, let's talk if we can. How many times were you shaking your head when you heard different reports and say, hey, this might be the day?
Well, I ran the full gamut of emotions when you think about how long that lockout lasted. It went from rage to frustration to anger to hopefulness to excited, almost to the point where it got to indifferent, and you don't want to get that feeling because then the passion really has taken a hit. So glad the game is back, excited that the Bruins are back and able to play some hockey. Even though it's only going to be 48 games, it should be a pretty fun short season.
Is it going to be like a 48-game Stanley Cup Finals as far as the players are concerned with this energy where every game is so important?
Well, I don't know if it'll be 48, but it'll be pretty. It might take a little time for these guys to settle in to to what we're used to seeing accomplished and executed on the ice, because 6 days of training camp, only a couple hundred guys went over to Europe, so that means 500 didn't. There'll be some uneven games and some uneven play, but the passion will be there, the emotion will be there, the intensity will be there. That will be reflective of what we watch in the playoffs.
And let's talk about how much the players, even though they'd probably want to have a full season, no question about it, but not to have as many preseason games, because sometimes there are a little too many where they get old, right?
Absolutely, and those that have had long enough careers to have been around in 94, 95 and experienced it, they know what it's all about. But yeah, when you play 48 games and each game has that much more meaning and that much more intensity, it's a good thing. The players enjoy that, and they know how important everything is, and that's why you play. It's competition and games that are meaningful, and that'll be the silver lining in this lockout.
Let's talk, if you can. As you can tell from our graphic, this week I'm pleased to be joined on the Video Sports Page by Andy Brickley. He's one of the color analysts for Boston Bruins hockey. Talk about the transition from the ice to being a broadcaster or an analyst. It's a whole lot different.
It sure is, and the game's always a little easier when you're sitting up on the 9th floor and you're evaluating what's happening at ice level at a breakneck pace. But it's an acquired skill. The game is such a fast-paced game, especially on television, the hurry-up face-offs. There's not a lot of time for replays. You have to prioritize. You have to be in constant communication with the truck. You got to all be on the same page if you want a quality broadcast. The play-by-play guy brings the excitement, and he lets you know where the puck is. My job is to always tell the viewer why things happen. But you have to be concise. You have to be to the point. You got to get in, get out, and you want to educate and entertain at the same time. So it's an acquired skill. It's something that you work at. It's a craft, just like when you played. You got to practice. You got to evaluate. You got to be critical of your own work. But it's something that I really love, and I'm lucky to have the job.
So you got 6 to 8 seconds to tell me why something happened, why it shouldn't have happened, why it won't happen again. Before I let you sneak away, think back to your playing days. Who was one of those bigger-than-life figures for you when you first skated in professional hockey? And I don't necessarily mean with the Bruins or a teammate. All of a sudden you played XYZ for opponent. and you're out there skating around the warm-ups and you said, wow, I'm on the ice with so-and-so?
Well, I was drafted by the Flyers, and the first guy that had that kind of impact on me was when I dressed in a Flyer uniform, and it was Bobby Clarke, because I grew up hating him. I hated Bobby Clarke.
Really?
Yeah, and some may say I still hate him today. So that was the first taste I got of it. Then I went to Pittsburgh, and Mario Lemieux came in as an 18-year-old, and the impact he had on me, even as a rookie player, what a special talent he was. The greatest player, the most fun teammate I ever had was Ray Bourque, and that's larger than life. That's as big as it gets. He's my favorite player that I ever played with. But looking across the ice against an opponent, it had to be Gretzky. You know, I had nights where I had to guard him and try to keep him off the board as best we could. That was always a great challenge, but he was awe-inspiring because of his obvious talent.
Well, you might have answered my next question. Who was that first guy? Forget about the figure he is as an individual, but once you're on the ice, that maybe after the game you drove to your apartment or you wherever you were going and you shook your head and say, how the hell could I catch this guy? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a guy that really jumped out at me, and this is a little bit off the board, was Pavel Bure. You know, it was a little bit late in my career. You had much more influx of European and Russian players and Czechs, and I didn't know much about him. And then I tried to angle him off. We were playing in Vancouver. I tried to angle him off in order to pinch him down the wall, and he was gone before I knew it. I mean, he was so explosive, so fast. You know, he's one of the all-time leaders in goals per game in his career, especially a guy that scored 400 plus. So I think it's a surprising answer. I surprised myself with it, but what a dynamic player he was.
All right, before I let you sneak away, how recognizable are you now? You go around the Boston, you can't be in a restaurant without somebody looking twice saying, I think I know this guy.
Well, you know, I was recognized when I played because I was interviewed a lot, and maybe that's the reason that I'm in the broadcasting business, because I try to give those people their time and give them a well-thought-out answer instead of a stock answer. But because of the success of the team, especially in 2011 when they won the Stanley Cup, I think that has gone a long way to making Jack Edwards and myself, you know, very recognizable around the city of Boston.
How cool is it that when WEI and John Dennis and Jerry Callahan, you're that analyst for hockey, that they ask you to come on and recognize you for your abilities to understand the game and bring it home to the people?
Yeah, I've had a relationship with John and Jerry for a number of years. I enjoy their program, listen to it obviously almost every day. That being said, yeah, to give me that platform to be able to talk a little hockey, whether it's to educate or show some insight, bring those guys up to speed with what's going on and make it an entertaining portion of their show is great. And if that's something that they want to continue, I'll be glad to do it.
All right, one final question. If you had to send a message home to the young high school players watching my program that are aspiring to be pro athletes and to achieve in life, what message could you give them? Because it doesn't come without a lot of hard work.
Right. I would say non-specific to hockey, just to athletes, play everything. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't just play hockey. Don't just play football. Play all the sports depending on the season. Be an athlete first, and then you can really get specific later on depending on how things go. I know a lot of people say enjoy the game, but I'm of the philosophy that if you're going to keep score, you might as well win. So compete. That's what I say. Play everything and compete and try to be the best you can be.
Well, Andy, I certainly enjoy your work as an analyst, but I enjoyed visiting with you more, bringing something to my program, and we'll enjoy your work for the rest of this winter.
Well, thanks for the kind words, and glad to do it.
We appreciate it. Andy Brickley joining us this week on the Video Sports Page. We'll continue with more, so stay with us. Okay, and as we do continue with this week's edition of our program, it's an opportunity now to put some focus on the youngsters. We have an opportunity to check in on some West Plymouth youth basketball. It comes from the junior division where the Vikings and the Terriers were in action on Wednesday. Of course, the Vikings under the direction of Lisa Murray and Wendy Shepard. I'll tell you what, Wendy Shepard has to be happy these days because it was her young son, Matt, that got the game-winning hoop with about 20 seconds to go. Final count was 18-17. Let's check in now on some of that action from Wednesday night. Nice defense.
Adam, go down low. Down low. Get. Adam. Put it up. Put it up.
Okay, West Plymouth Youth Basketball from the junior division, just 3 games remaining on the regular season. Season just whipping right along, and of course some of these teams having outstanding campaigns. The Terriers right now with an outstanding record and one of the tops in their division. All right, we're just about out of time. We'd like to thank you for yours and invite you back with us again next week for another edition of our program. I want a big thank you goes out to our producer, Rich Goulart. I've been your host, Carl Pratt. Health and wisdom.